Sarah here. Let's talk about the 10 rules for using positive reinforcement. This is an amazing evidence based intervention. It's a consequence based intervention, and if you do it with fidelity, meaning if you do it well, then it can have some pretty powerful results in your classroom. So here is the flow chart. Here's that 3-term contingency. So again, pointing out that reinforcement and punishment are both consequence-based behavioral interventions. So we have the antecedent, which is something that happens right before the behavior. There's the behavior. The consequence is either a reinforcement, a positive reinforcement, that's what that little plus is, or a negative reinforcement. Or the consequence could be a punishment, which could be either positive punishment or negative punishment. This is literally a scientific term, reinforcement. I had a student once who said, I don't believe in reinforcement. And it's literally like saying, I don't believe in gravity. If you drop a pen, we know what's going to happen. So if positive reinforcement is done correctly, what we will see is this target behavior increasing. If we're not doing it well, we won't see the target behavior increasing. So really, reinforcement is a scientific term if done well. So the definition of positive reinforcement is reinforcement will increase the tendency that the target behavior will increase. So that behavior you want to happen will increase. So you need to really think about, what do I want to see more of in my classroom? Students raising their hands, students staying in their seat, getting their work done. That's when we want to use positive reinforcement, because it will increase those positive behaviors, the things that you want to see more of. So let's jump into the 10 rules. So rule number 1, reinforcers should be reinforcing. So here's a picture of a student looking through a bunch of cool stickers. Again, as teachers, a lot of times we make assumptions about what's reinforcing to students, and they might not actually be reinforcing. Again, if you're just only giving stickers out and that's the only thing you're giving, and you're not seeing that positive behavior increase, the target behavior increase, then you got to really recalibrate and think to yourself, is this reinforcing? Do students like this? If not, you got to go back to the drawing board. So when we look at these words here, it is necessary to determine whether what we think would be a reward is actually reinforcing to the student. Does your child appear excited when receiving it? That's one way to know. Another way to know is do something called a stimulus preference assessment. It's basically just a way to check what they like. So find out what they like. You can do like a survey. You can ask them. You can ask their parents. You just want to make sure that what you're using is actually what they want. So number 2, reinforcement should be contingent. Basically, reinforcement should only be available when the target behavior occurs. Be careful about letting reinforcers be accessed at times other than when the target behavior occurs. When open access to the reinforcer can diminish the power of the reinforcer. So let's pretend this kindergartner is reinforced by having some free choice time, some playtime with these. He's identified that these cars are fun for him. Then we don't want them out all the time where he can just access them whenever. Otherwise, the power of that reinforcer will wear off. The student will satiate and it won't be something that's as powerful to use. But let's just say if we have these reinforcers in a bin, like up high, then you can definitely use that as a reinforcer. It's going to stay much more powerful if we don't have open access to it. Rule number 3, a variety of reinforcers should be used. So when a variety of reinforcers are used, you will reduce the likelihood of the student becoming satiated. So satiation is a behavioral term by the reinforcer. A variety of reinforcers will keep them fresh and more powerful. So just like anything, I love M&Ms, but if I had open access and I ate M&Ms all day long, eventually I would satiate and I would say, I cannot even look at one more M&M. That will make me sick. So you want to use a variety of different things and mix it up. I had one principal that had about 1,000 of the same pencil. And when the students came up to the office, they got a pencil. And after a while, they were pretty done with pencils. You'd see pencils floating in the toilets and broken in the hallways. And, if he had mixed it up and had a bunch of stuff, Think toy box, think treasure box, just throw it all in there and you never know what the kids are going to like. 4, social reinforcement should be paired with primaries. So if your student does not like or respond to social reinforcers, such as smiles and praise, by associating them with primary reinforcers like any kind of food, drink, that type of thing, those biological needs, they will eventually become reinforcing as well. When social and primaries become paired, you can eventually fade the primary slash tangible reinforcer to a very thin schedule. Social reinforcements are the principal rewards used in everyday settings. So it is a more naturalistic, it's a more naturalistic way to reinforce students. When we have students that just don't care about social praise, like, wow, good job, or that's awesome, then sometimes pairing it with those primaries can really kind of create a link or an association that you can build on. Number 5, continually develop and identify reinforcers. This is similar to the others, but continually round up and find items, toys, etc., that can be reinforcing for your child. So think, how often do students need to have this continually identified? Some students, every single day, they're going to be different as far as what they like. Some students are pretty consistent week to week. But again, if you're doing a stimulus preference assessment, you wanna check in and know your student well enough to know, okay, so they liked coloring yesterday. Let me check. Coloring, or do they want more recess time? Or do they want time on the Chromebook? So you're just kind of continually developing and identifying reinforcers. I'm the type, when I go to a thrift store, a garage sale, any kind of store like Target, I'm always looking in the toy aisle like, okay, what could be reinforcing for my students? Oh, cool. Here's a pack of seasonal stickers. Let me grab these. Number 6, use the element of novelty and surprise to enhance the reinforcement. There's your toy box, surprise bin. The element of surprise and novelty can be very enjoyable and reinforcing. Create a grab bag, mystery box, or treasure box full of new reinforcers. Just throw them in there, because a lot of times kids are like, even if they haven't seen a toy for a long time, when you bring it out again, it can become novel and it can be fun. So use that element of surprise to your advantage. 7, in the beginning, reinforcement should occur immediately. So, when we're speaking in behavioral scientific terms, reinforcement is most effective when it occurs within seconds of the behavior. It provides the strongest association between the behavior and the reinforcement. It makes it clear to the student what the behavior is. Providing reinforcement rapidly reduces the chance that other behaviors, non target behaviors, will inadvertently become reinforced. So there was a student teacher in the field that said once a week, they'll get to pick a toy on Friday and they work all week for it. Sometimes kids need a lot more immediate reinforcement. So for that kid, you might want to differentiate this and every day, right? Some kids honestly need reinforcement much, much more often. And when you're thinking about waiting a week or even a full day to get the prize, that's really not associating it as closely with the actual target behavior as possible. So many things can happen in between the behaviors and you reinforcing the student. One teacher gave an example of how they would get their kind of checkout card at the end of the week, and their parent actually was the one who reinforced them at home. But, in the meantime, they go on the bus. Who knows what happens? They could punch their neighbor, they could yell at a student, and then they walk off the bus and, their parent reinforces them with an ice cream cone. So what's actually being reinforced? You have to really think about that immediacy of reinforcement and think about each student's going to be different. Some students, can wait that full week, but again, you have to make sure you're really linking what they're earning the reward for, the reinforcement for, as close as possible to the behavior. Link those as closely as possible. 8, reinforcement should be faded over time. So the longer a team uses an intensive reinforcement schedule, like let's just say a student gets reinforced every hour, the more difficult it becomes to fade, and the behavior is more likely to extinguish when the rewards are reduced. So in the back of our minds, we're not going to just pull the plug quickly or overnight, but just think this is something that you want to kind of fade and kind of thin over time. You don't want to be reinforcing to an extremely intensive reinforcement schedule for the child's entire life. You want to move towards the things that are more naturalistic and less frequent when possible. Again, at the beginning, you would want to reinforce a lot more and a lot more frequently. So 9, in the early teaching, label the behavior that's being reinforced. It really helps when students know what behavior is being reinforced that you would like her to repeat. Labeling it also strengthens the connection between the reinforcer and the behavior. Later, it will become less important to specifically label the behavior because your child will be able to understand the contingencies. So when you're just labeling, like let's just say your target behavior is raising their hand, you can literally label and say, wow, thank you, Megan, for raising your hand. Appreciate you raising your hand before you talk. That type of thing. That's really what labeling is. And again, it's not forever, but it is just really making sure the student knows what the target behavior is and what they're actually getting reinforced for. 10, last one, over time, move to reinforcement that is more naturalistic. So eventually you will kind of stop using some of those more I guess this is more secondary reinforcers and move to more generalized reinforcers. Using practical and more natural reinforcement, it does help with generalization. So it helps with having the skill generalized between different settings, different teachers, different people. I have a picture here of students playing with leaves because you can't get more natural than that. And really, eventually, we do want students to be internally motivated, but just as a reminder, a lot of times kids, especially kids with special needs, need extrinsic consequence-based interventions. So these are the 10 tips. Thank you so much for watching, and here's my citations.